Hi guys, so let's now take a look at perfect competition. So when it comes to perfect competition, we're of course dealing with a market with many buyers and sellers and perfect information. Next up, we've got these key assumptions to understand here, okay? That there's many buyers and sellers, of course. There's homogeneous goods, so that means that the firm will be a price taker because their goods are not differentiated in any way from the rest of the goods that are available. There's perfect information, so all firms and consumers, so all buyers and sellers have perfect information about prices and cost levels. If a new piece of technology comes out which can help to reduce costs, then a business can choose to adopt it. If it does so, that will improve its cost situation, of course, and then others may follow suit. Now, number 4 is about no barriers to entry or exit. So theoretically, it's very easy to actually enter such markets and leave them. And number 5, that firms are profit maximizers. So they will aim to produce where MC equals MR, the profit maximization point, but consumers are utility maximizers. Of course, they want to actually derive enough utility and maximize that utility in their marginal benefit. Okay, so let's just understand the diagrammatics for a firm. Now, when it comes to the demand curve facing a firm in perfect competition is perfectly elastic. So we can see this here. D equals AR equals MR. Let's just put it down like so. It's perfectly elastic because increasing the actual quantity doesn't have any impact upon the price level. For most firms, if they choose to actually increase output, they will need to sell their goods at a lower price, but not so when it comes to perfect competition, because there's so many buyers or so many sellers, so many producers, that if one firm increases their output quite significantly, it only has a tiny impact on the overall market supply. If you think about that for an individual dairy farm, if a dairy farm significantly increases its output, it's still not going to have a impact on price levels for the national market. Okay, so that's the first thing to be really aware of. Now, of course, we have the conventional U-shaped average cost curve, and let's just put in our long run average cost curve there and label that through. So there's our long run average cost curve. Now, in addition to this, of course, we will have our marginal cost curve, and we can put that in like so. So let's label up our axes, make sure this is looking tip top, and then we'll look at the industry as a whole then. So we've got our price point here. Let's just put down P1, and meanwhile we can see that we've got Q1. Now, before we move on, there's a couple of really important things I want you to take away from this diagram. First up, we can see we're at a point where MC equals MR. So the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue. So we know that they are profit maximizers. Look what happens as soon as marginal cost exceeds the actual marginal revenue earned by this firm. As soon as that happens, they stop producing economic output. Now, in this period, in this level of output to the left-hand side here, we can see that marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. As such, all of this area is actually an area where marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost and will contribute to the firm's overall profitability. And you can see they squeeze out that last additional unit of output to the point where MC equals MR. So that's really important in understanding that profit maximization point. Now, there's more. We're not done yet. In addition to this, we can also see that they're producing at the lowest point on their average cost curve. So this means that they are also productively efficient. So we can see that the average cost curve is at the lowest level, so this firm is productively efficient. That again is very significant. Okay, right, but we're still not done yet, because in addition to this, we can see that the actual price level equals the marginal cost. Price equals marginal cost. As such, this tells us that this is actually a level for allocative efficiency. And we can measure that nicely in a moment when we look at the industry demand and supply curve. Okay, so there's a number of crucial points we need to understand in relation to this diagram on its own and as a long run situation for a firm in perfect competition. So now the next thing is we have to take this price level across. Let's just put in that price point. I'm just going to refer to this as P star here. Let's take that across, and then I'm going to put in the demand and the supply level. So there we go, demand and supply looks like so. As we know, downward sloping demand curve, upward sloping supply curve, and then we've got Q star here. So we can also see on this diagram for the industry as a whole, let's just highlight, underline that heading there, that we can see that this, so we can also see that looking at our industry demand and supply curve, we've got this area of consumer surplus. Oh yes, so there is our consumer surplus. And let's just highlight all of that area. There it is. Okay, consumer surplus, well, it's maximised. Remember what we had said here, consumers are utility maximisers. They've done that there because every consumer who is deriving benefit from consuming this product will continue to do so right up to the point where the actual marginal costs of production for all of the firms in the industry then begins to exceed the marginal benefit. So that's significant. Now, in addition to this, we can see that the producer surplus is represented by the whole of this area here. Okay, so we can see consumer surplus is maximised, producer surplus is maximised. This is, you know, an optimal situation. And just going back to what we said here, we can see that we have allocative efficiency, and in effect, remember, we have price equaling marginal cost here, because remember that this is effectively the all the firms in the industry and their marginal cost, and this is all of the consumers and their marginal benefits. The marginal benefit equals the marginal cost, the price level equals the marginal cost. This is allocative efficiency. Great stuff. There's a number of criticisms though. Okay, so it's not all good. A lot of people cite this this marketplace, this industry as unrealistic, that it doesn't truly exist. Okay, there are relatively few examples. Perhaps you could use Christmas trees as another example. We of course mentioned milk, perhaps when it comes to butter as well. But interestingly, when it comes to butter and cheese, many of those dairy farms that produce such goods, well, they engage in competitive behaviour. And they actually look at non-price competitive methods that they can use to differentiate their products against others. And this breaks away from that principle of homogeneous goods and being price takers, of course. So if you are differentiating your good, you're saying, in essence, mine is different to theirs because, and therefore you're going to price it differently. So we can forget about this notion of being a price taker thus here. So that is a really significant one. Moreover, a lot of people actually critique this model by saying, well, who actually sets the price? Because it's assuming that firms are price takers and consumers are also price takers. So who is truly setting the price within this marketplace? And as such, those that criticise the model of perfect competition in this way, they say, well, it's more appropriate to communist markets rather than, or command economies, rather than market-based economies where you would see this interaction of demand and supply. Okay, and our third and final criticism is are prices really so responsive to demand and supply? We know that as soon as we start moving these, and we'll look at this in our next lesson, as soon as we start moving the demand or the supply curve here, it will have an impact on the price level. Is it really like that though? Are markets really truly as responsive as that? When it comes to manufactured goods, it's highly unlikely that would be the case. Perhaps when it comes to some primary goods, that could be plausible, but certainly some do criticise this model of perfect competition because of that third point. Great stuff, guys. I hope that's been useful. Nice to see you. I'll see you next time.